I'd like you to meet a new friend of mine. His name is Lloyd Vogel. Someone has hurt my friend Lloyd, and not just on his face. He is having a hard time forgiving the person who hurt him. Do you know what that means? To forgive? It's a decision we make to release a person from the feelings of anger we have at them. It's strange, but sometimes it's hardest of all to forgive someone we love.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back again. This is Sean.
And this is Brian.
And this is Re-Raw. Today we want to talk a bit about a film. This is not a review of a movie or anything like that, but it is a brilliant movie that me and Brian watched called A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood with Tom Hanks.
Fabulous movie. To be honest, the truths that come around in this movie that are straight from the Bible, but straight from great psychology, great for mental health, mental hygiene, they're all in there, Sean. And I think both of us, you were trying to get me to watch this movie for months, and I just was thinking, I don't really want to watch this American stuff. And I watched it and was blown away. A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood. And this guy was a genius. I mean, this guy was a genius because he had the art of bringing a beautiful atmosphere into what he called a rainy day. What a fantastic ambition in life, to be able to make someone's day better, make it, as he said, a beautiful day in the neighbourhood. So not just an individual, but even families and communities. Great stuff.
To be honest, Brian, I was a bit shocked that you had never heard of Mr. Rogers' Neighbourhood, the television show.
Yeah, I don't believe we ever had it on Irish television. We had Sesame Street. My primary education was Sesame Street. But
it's good to see you progressed a small bit.
Yeah, that's right. I went into Bosco. But profound, really, really profound. And Sean, I've actually looked him up on YouTube and all that kind of stuff as well. And it's been really just such profound health comes through in what this guy is saying. And as a therapist, and both of us are counsellors, we spend our lives trying to bring healing and trying to bring freedom from pains of life. And this guy, who is a Christian, actually, the original guy, Fred Rogers, from what I can figure out, was a Christian minister, but then packed in the church ministry really to reach the world, to reach his community, to reach the neighbourhoods around the world with really life-transforming truths.
Yeah. And I think what was the most brilliant thing about this movie is that it's actually a Hollywood film.
Yeah.
Yeah, the junk that we're used to seeing that Hollywood will portray, and the agendas or whatever it is that they might be selling through whichever film, to get something that's actually wholesome, that's actually worth watching, and it can actually help us is unbelievable. And Tom Hanks did such an amazing job portraying what this guy Fred Rogers was really all about, which was trying to bring difficult concepts to children. It was a children's program that we all grew up on in the States. He just did a wonderful job of it. And the fact that they were able to take those concepts, it completely saturated with the gospel without ever actually Bible bashing at all, and then bring them through the silver screen for the world to view. I was really just pleased with the fact that they did that.
And to be honest, what my resistance to it is that I didn't want to get into something that was twee and naff and full of, Christianese type stuff, because I personally get very tired of that, if I'm honest with you. But like, I work in very, very rough circumstances, and the twee doesn't work. The superficial stuff doesn't work.
Not at all. No.
And our country, definitely in Ireland, we've turned away from formalism, from ritualism, with regard to Christianity. In its outward appearance, we've kind of, as a society, we've turned away from that. But I don't think we've turned away from the truths of Christianity yet. Not all of them, certainly. And I think Ireland is a great place to bring up children, Sean.
It is.
I work in different countries around Europe and stuff like that, and nothing matches Ireland, in my belief. I mean, I was with a family this week in Dublin, inner city Dublin. And they had, funny enough, did some Americans staying with them. I don't know what part of America they're from, and America's so vast, there's different areas of different things. But the people that had visited them couldn't understand that they let, in inner city Dublin, they let their children go out and play. But we still have that in Ireland to a large degree. The children go out and play. And it's fabulous. Now, in every area you can't do that. But in some areas, it's still very much done and a great form of growing up. And we need to make good neighbourhoods.
Yeah, we do.
We all have a responsibility. Whether you're a Christian or not Christian, we have a responsibility to our neighbourhood. And we've been swallowed into this individualism. It's just me and my castle and that's it. But if we just take care of our little corner and that's it, our whole society goes down the tube, which means we go down the tube with it. But if we take this responsibility for our neighbour, responsibility for our neighbourhoods, my gosh, it could be transformed. And we had, our opening clip today was something that was very deep on forgiveness, and we're going to obviously go there in conversation. But the overall concept of being responsible and taking care of your neighbourhood, it's slipping away from us. But in some way, we need to redeem it. We need to bring it back. I
think we can redeem that mainly by taking our children and raising our children in that. Part of what you're saying about societies becoming very isolated and insular.
Yeah,
it's so easy. And when you have a generation of children who grow up with screen time and nothing else, they don't know how to interact with other people. They don't grow up with the hardships, not that they're hardships, but the arguments you have with your friend over whatever, whose ball and who actually broke the window. And these things that are, nobody wants to see a window busted, but at the same time, it's almost a rite of passage as a child to go through these experiences, to work through these problems, so that when you become an adult, you know how to handle them. And now we have a generation of people that come up that don't know how to handle simple things, interact with their neighbors, and it's just as easy. And now that the world is affording it to them at a monthly charge, of course, we can just let you sit at home, stay away from everybody, and have a nice, comfy life.
And become a vegetable.
Become a vegetable and fall apart emotionally.
Yeah.
Because man was never meant to be alone, was he?
No, man definitely wasn't meant to be alone. We were meant for neighbourliness. We were made to be with other people. And one of the things I'm picking up in inner city Ireland at the moment, I think is the same in the Western world. Throughout the Western world, we see it on the news as well, is that our generation is becoming increasingly angry. But I think some of this anger, there's a number of factors around that. Maybe a sense of entitlement that we'll talk about another time. But there is that individualism of I want, it's about me. Yeah. And when I don't get what YouTube says I should get, I get very angry.
Yeah.
So we need to start re-educating in some way. Back to what I had as a kid, actually. And also that there's something about the wealth that we have. I grew up in the mid 80s. We weren't that badly off growing up. But in comparison to now, we were very poor. But the idea of borrowing some sugar from your neighbour, that you need a lift to the hospital because your son has suddenly had an accident on the bike or whatever else it may be. I remember as teenagers, we'd go down, we'd cycle down to the city centre. Yeah. We'd meet there and then we'd empty our pockets to see who had enough money to buy a coffee or a few coffees, or because we wouldn't have enough. We would just know that. But that poverty, and the poverty in itself isn't a good thing, but that poverty in itself brought us together, that need. And I think we've forgotten that we need one another.
Yeah. Well, it's really easy to forget that you need other people when your pockets are fat, or at least fat enough to buy whatever it is that you wanted to get.
Yeah.
We were actually just talking the other day about things. It's funny you bring that up about the 80s and growing up in the 80s and the early 90s even, when children would be out running around and the way we used to get on our bikes and go much further than a child would be allowed to today, especially without a helmet.
And without a mobile phone.
God save us. Without a helmet. Knee pads and elbow pads and gum shields. And I think if we could get back to that, relying on one another, or at least knowing that our neighbors matter. And if we can get back to the idea of this movie and the person of Fred Rogers, and as Tom Hanks was portraying in this movie brilliantly, that everywhere Mr. Rogers went in this film, and I would say indeed in real life, he was absolutely adored.
Yeah.
And I believe the reason why is because he brought that sense of value and hope to people, that you're in a neighborhood. You are my neighbor. You are one of ours. You belong to us as much as I belong to you. And can't we do something together?
Yeah.
And as you say, we've come so far away from that.
We have, but we still have some examples left, certainly in Ireland. David Hume passed away a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And for people who aren't listening from Ireland, you may not know who he was, but he was the guy who was the forerunner of the whole peace process in Northern Ireland, and really negotiated and started to talk to the IRA, which was, just not done and shouldn't have been done and all that kind of stuff people would have said. But Sean, he loved his neighbourhood. He absolutely loved his neighbourhood, and he took risks for the sake of the generations that were coming behind him. Now, what was fascinating in all of this, I don't want to go into John Hume, not David Hume. David Hume is a theologian. John Hume. John Hume. He loved his neighbourhood for his life, right? And I think he'd be worth a programme, in fact. But he got some form of dementia, which is terribly sad for such an intelligent man. I mean, he was brought up in the terraced houses in Derry, Londonderry, whatever you want to call it, and he won a scholarship to university, and he got educated. But he wasn't prepared for his education just to prosper him. He went back and he never moved out of his marital home because he wanted his whole community to rise up. And then he did an incredible feat in politics, and amazing. No matter what kind of side of the fence you'd be on, you'd have to give him some credit. But then he got dementia. But he used to walk around Derry city without his memory, or with impaired cognition to a very large degree, and he was as safe as a house. Well, I tell you why.
Tell me.
The neighbourhood was looking out for him. Everyone in Derry was taking care of him. Nothing was ever going to go wrong for him. He was never going to be lost. Because he had fed into his neighbourhood. His neighbourhood was then feeding into him. Sean, there's a massive lesson here. And he wasn't a guy that had a big black Bible under his arm, but he had grasped some biblical concept here of neighbourlyhood that a lot of us with black Bibles under our arms could really learn.
Yeah.
About loving our neighbour, not tolerating our neighbour, not building walls between our neighbours, sectarian walls or whatever they may be, religious walls, political walls, but actually loving our neighbours, because what you sow, it'll come back to you. Some people will call it karma. I don't call it karma, but the Bible does say what you sow, you'll reap. Imagine if we all loved our neighbours. What kind of a society would we be brought up in?
But isn't that the concept that love reciprocates?
Yeah.
You give it. If I love someone, they're going to love me back.
Yes.
Not in the sense, maybe in the sense of hugging and those types of affection, but even in the sense of taking care of one another. Once you know somebody has your back, somebody's looking out for your best interest.
Yeah.
It's only nature.
Yeah.
To say, I will look out for that person because I know that they would do the same for me.
Yeah. Or even if they wouldn't, I'll still do the same for them.
And that's the place we should be in.
Yeah. I mean, that's the agape type, isn't it? I'll do it for them anyway.
But we're talking on a larger scale. Even in that sense, everyone would do it. I would think, maybe I'm being a bit naive, but most people would do that. If you're looking out for me, I'll look out for you. And shouldn't love reciprocate in that kind of a way? And you see that in the story of John
Hume.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Imagine being able to walk around a whole city and to be as safe as a house because everybody in that city was looking out for you, not being nosy, not mocking you, not just selfishly doing your own business, but there's John. We got to look after John.
Yeah, that's something.
I think it's incredible. Yeah. Yeah, and we need to do. I need to do it in my community. You need to do it in yours. It's easy just to point to Derry or whatever, and they've had neighbourhood problems up there. You know what I mean? They really have. You know, internationally known.
That's putting it lightly.
I'm just putting it a bit
Neighbourhood. The neighbourhood committee didn't like the new tree that was put up. They should have went with an oak, not an ash.
That's right. So I mean, I think this guy comes out with a beautiful concept. He said, "It's a beautiful day in the neighbourhood," and he isn't trite. He sounds trite. I got to be honest, Sean. When I started watching, I was thinking, "What has Sean Bowman got me into here?" He sounds, so sweet and so like, but actually, he was a courageous cookie. I mean, he really was.
He was a fearless man.
Fearless, and I mean, he dealt with the toughest issues. I mean, in his program over the years, he one particular week. Now, this is children's work he was doing, children's programs. One particular week he dedicated to divorce. How do you tell children about divorce every day for a week that will make them feel secure and loved and cared for at the end of it? That's courage, man. It's a heck of a lot of skill as well. And to give them the tools, furthermore, to deal with it. Yeah. And to know how to express themselves and to deal with their own emotions in the middle of these confusing things. Yeah, he was really good at that, talking about death and loads of things that people just aren't prepared to talk to children about. And we wonder then why we're escaping into movies and drugs and all that kind of stuff, because our society is increasingly, forming escape mechanisms from reality. And if we divorce ourselves from reality, we're in big trouble. Now we need maybe a bit of an escape from stress every little, to watch a movie for a while just to, switch off from work. That's not an issue. But not to learn how to tackle life and real life, that's a problem. Yeah. And although we're talking about Mr. Rogers working with children, and there was a quote in the film where they ask Tom Hanks as Fred Rogers, what is the objective? What are you doing with these children's programs? And his answer was, I'm trying to help children deal positively with their feelings. And what I thought was brilliant about that is that the whole movie is actually about Fred Rogers helping a grown man, as we heard in the clip. Lloyd Vogel is the character's name. And there's a brilliant scene in the movie, and one of the biggest rules of film is that the actor is to never look into the camera. The camera doesn't exist. And Tom Hanks just shatters that. And in doing that, he brings us right into the place of Lloyd Vogel, actually. But in what he's doing is he's trying to help Lloyd deal with the hatred. If we're honest, it's a hatred that he has towards his father, and he can't forgive him. Yeah. And so what he's trying to do is help him manage that, help him find resolution in that. And he says to Lloyd, I want you to spend the next however many seconds thinking about those who loved you into existence. And he says, the time starts now. And he says the time starts now. Tom Hanks looks into the camera, and you find yourself all of a sudden thinking about those who loved you into existence, because Tom Hanks all of a sudden places you in Lloyd Vogel's shoes, and all of a sudden you're in the movie. But just that concept that he's trying to deal with children, yet it's adults who are watching this. It's adults who struggle with this, because deep down, aren't we still the children that haven't faced up to the divorce that maybe we've dealt with, to the falling out that we had with our sibling, the dirty doing that happened to us by another loved one or significant person in our life. And here we are finding this child's program so fascinating, because these concepts, as simple as they are, as you've well said, adults, Christian adults of all people, can't grasp these things. I find that just, I don't know, to be honest, I don't find it shocking at all, because here I am. And here you are. And don't we all struggle with these things? Absolutely. And we think children have different issues to us, but they don't. No. They're human beings. We suffer with the same stuff. Well, our communication might be different. Our cognition may be different, but they're the same problems and they have the same solutions.
They do.
They have the same solutions. And this is where, again, I keep saying it, Sean, the role of teachers and parents and youth leaders and Sunday school teachers is just incredibly important. Teaching people how to live. Because if you can get it anyway right from a young age, that's going to develop for the rest of your life. Whatever we get at a young age is going to be magnified and developed, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Is whether it's good or bad. And I think that point where he does stop, and he used to have a practice of that, as far as I know, that for 30 seconds he would just stop and ask the people to think of, those people who have, how did you phrase it, who have put them where they are?
Who love them into being.
Love them into being. Yeah. The phrase that I've used up to hearing this guy was, we're standing on the shoulders of other people. Who has shored you up before. And for me, there's a whole list of people that I am in deep gratitude to, and I've mentioned that before. And that creates something inside in us, but it also challenges us, and it challenges us to shore up other people, to shore up other people. If someone is behaving badly, there's a reason. And he said something really important in our opening line today. He said, this person is hurt, but not just on his face.
Yeah.
But he's got a wound in his heart. Is that how we've phrased it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And I deal with, what could be described as behaviourally challenged people. But there's always a reason. There's always a story. And our job is not to criticise them, not to condemn people, because that doesn't help.
No.
It really doesn't help. Our job is to shore up and be someone that at some stage in their lives, when they close their eyes and they think of who has loved me into being, maybe your name or my name or the listener's name could come up and say, yeah, that person helped me at that point in my life.
Yeah. And to be that person is phenomenal. As we were talking before we started recording about some of the behaviorally challenged people, if that's the way we want to say it, more difficult people in society. And they're the quickest to be written off by a lot of people, especially those that maybe don't struggle as much.
Yeah.
But there is one particular case, and it was said by a family member that when we think about during our difficult times, if I could just get back to this time in my life when it was good, things were good, even if it's all the way back to being 2 or 3 years old. There are some people out there that don't have that to go back to. That's right. Zero. They have no one.
Yeah.
They have no good memory. They've never had a decent life in that sense that they can look back on.
Yeah.
And have a sense of normality. And if we can just grasp a hold of this idea of being neighborly, of being helping, shoring up other people that need it, there genuinely are people out there that have never had anyone do that for them.
Yes.
And if we say, I'm willing to do that, you could be that one person that radically changes.
Yeah.
And it could be something as simple as sitting with them and asking them how they're doing, and then shutting up and letting them pour their heart out to you.
That's right.
And you may walk away and say, I've done nothing to help this person. But the fact that you were willing to take your time when you owed them nothing and said, I'll just listen.
Yeah.
You may be the first person in their life that's ever given that amount of care to them.
That's right.
So we can never sell ourselves short because we don't know the circumstances. Lloyd Vogel had a hurt face, but we didn't know what was happening in his heart in the movie. Well, we did because it allowed us to see it, but only because of that. But in reality, we don't get to see what's happening in people's hearts. So we can only assume whatever I do for this person could make a massive impact on them.
That's right. But even if it made a small difference, I mean, if you have a ship that's going in a particular direction and you change the course 1 degree,
you could end up 100 miles off target.
That ship is going to arrive at a different place.
Yeah.
So, we don't have to be rocket scientists. We don't have to do, but, there's a beautiful concept in Scripture. That's at the beginning of the Bible. And God is talking to Abraham. Abraham is the man that God picked to bless and to bring a blessing, the blessing of Christ ultimately to the world. But he said, I will bless you and make you a blessing. And in our churches for years, we've heard that God loves you, God loves you, God wants to bless you, or at least you should do. If you're going to any decent church, you'll hear that all the time. But what we don't often hear, or maybe not enough, we do hear, but not enough, is that, but God's plan is that you will be a blessing to those around you.
Yeah.
And you need to find ways to do that. You know, that we, and I like to use different words than words that we're used to in the Bible and stuff, but benefit. Are you a benefit to the person you're working with? You know, do they go home and think, I'm glad I'm working with Sean, or, oh gosh, that Sean gives me such a hard time. You know what I mean? And
I'm glad you've noticed, Brian.
That's right. Well, you've been a great blessing to me. I mean, to be honest with you, and I know I've been a tremendous one to you. But we, you know, but actually, I wonder if we could make that decision to agree with God's plan that we will be blessed, but also that we would benefit those around you. Imagine even the Christian community would dedicate themselves to that. It would be one heck of a beautiful neighbourhood, I tell you that.
And Christ said to the disciples, ye are the light of the world.
Yeah.
And who takes a light and hides it?
Yeah.
But yet here we are, putting our hands round our flame. And I think you're right. If we want to light up the neighbourhoods and change,
Yeah.
and really make an impact in our communities,
Yeah.
it's going to take time.
Yeah.
You know, we can throw money at a problem and say, now we'll support this ministry or that ministry. And money is needed to run ministries. But what's needed most are people that care, that actually want to make an impact in their neighborhood and love people the way that we see in this film.
Yeah. I've been training some people recently on that are doing huge food distribution for homeless people. And we give out a bag with a dinner in it, with some crisps or chips, as you'd call them in America, some chocolate and a drink and maybe a sandwich. That's a lot of food. And I said, you know what? The food isn't the main thing. It's how you give the food. That we have a responsibility to love, not to respect and be clinically correct. That's all important as well. But to love that person for the 15, 20 seconds that they're in front of us, to put a smile on their face and tell them, you are worth it. You have dignity, and we're doing this because you're important. Or you can throw a bag of food and say, fill up your belly for an hour. You know, but that's what can be done.
But what's going to bring somebody back? The sandwich?
Yeah.
Or the sandwich and the value that you've given them?
What's going to improve their lives? Maybe someone will walk away and say, well, actually, maybe that person thinks I'm worth something, so maybe I'm worth something. You know, rather than I'm going to throw myself off a bridge. Nobody cares for me.
So there you have it. Ham and potatoes. Bringing hope to the world.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But maybe bringing a little bit of hope to somebody, even a small bit of hope, can go a very, very long way.
So maybe ham and potatoes won't solve the neighborhood problems in Derry. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, I don't know.
Sure.
But if we can get back to the key element of this movie, which is forgiveness and love. You know, Jesus said to his disciples, it's actually the mark that people will know that you are my disciples because you love one another. So maybe a good place to start, if we really want to help our neighbors, if we really want to do that, maybe we should forgive one another and love one another.
Drop the hatchet.
Stop hacking the head off of each other in Sunday worship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Roast pasta for dinner.
And say, you know, what if we actually loved each other for a change? I mean, I know you're a bit ugly and I don't like the way you smell, but you don't like the way I smell either. So let's just get over all of this stuff that we've been arguing about for centuries and say, let's love one another and actually make an impact.
And you're important. So important that Jesus came to die for you. That's how important you are, even though I don't like you. On that note, Sean, it's been great.
Brian, I just have to say before we go, Jesus loves you.
Thank you, Sean.
Everybody else thinks you're an Egypt.
Until next time.
Take care. Good luck. Bye.
Bye.